investing works, how the resource allocation works. And to that extent, rather than take a job in another company that paid me so much more, I took a job in financial services. And if you ask me, what is the single most important career decision you've ever taken? It is to do what you are passionate about. It might not be obvious when you're just getting out and thinking of earning a living, but making that call, holding back from reward and focusing on what you care about can help. So yes, you do have something to invest, and you should invest along the lines of your passion. Invest along the lines of your passion. It may not be the single thing that you are most passionate about, but it must be something you care enough about. So for instance, you might be passionate about football, but if you have no talent in that field, either as a player or as a coach or as a manager, you don't want to invest in that space because then you also struggle. So you need to find a space between your skills, your talent, and your passion. Sharing early career experience, one of the things that you're going to be faced with is every single day of your life, you'll be making a call. How much time to spend on the things that are important to you, on your health, on your family, on your friends, on your passions and your hobbies, on your career. So the one thing that we all wake up and give up in the morning is the time that we have. You've got 24 hours. How much of that do you want to spend on rest? How much on exercise? That is the single most important aspect of investing, because if you've made up your mind that you are only going to give 8 hours a day to the job or whatever your job is, or 10 hours, whatever it is, then you've already capped the investment you can make in time. Remember this, your success on your career is a function of your skills, it's a function of your experience, it's a function of your relationships. All of these things have one thing in common. None of them can improve without time. You don't build relationship unless you spend time staying in touch with people and caring about them. You can't improve your skills unless you actually go out of your way to study, to learn, to ask to be mentored. All of these require time. You can't get quality experience unless you commit the time to it. So yes, time becomes the single most important thing you have to invest in your career. The other point that is relevant is you'll be forced to make choices between further education or work experience. This might happen for you if you have funding just out of school. You might decide to go for a master's or an MBA, or choose to go for a work experience. I chose to go for work experience ahead of getting additional degrees. At that time, it wasn't a very popular choice. I think the idea of getting an MBA was such a well-sold option to advance your career that it wasn't popular for people to turn that down and go for job experience. But my advice to you is, if you have a solid first degree, what you need to do is gain job experience, because there is a disconnect between the schools today, between education today, and the experience that you need when you get into the office. So the sooner you start to acquire those experiences, the better for you. And this applies to you even if you're an undergraduate. If you have an opportunity for internship, never ever turn it down. It's really important that you take those internships, learn how to relate with people in the office, learn how to work in teams, learn how to collaborate. And so to that extent, I strongly advise that you consider taking work experience seriously, even if you're thinking about taking additional degrees. Now, back to the workplace itself, what can I say? When you come into the office, people are not looking for you to be an expert. In fact, in most cases, people recruit you knowing that they have to teach you almost everything you need to do the job. But I can tell you what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody who is passionate, somebody who is really interested. They're looking for somebody who is inquisitive, somebody who is asking questions. They're looking for somebody who is self-motivated, somebody who is not waiting to be told what to do. But most importantly, we're looking for somebody who can work with people. You need to bear this in mind. Being able to work with people has become a major, major skills for you to succeed in career. Because the one thing that is consistent is, as you grow older in your career, as you spend more time, as you go higher, you will have to work with more and more people. And this is not just about those you start with who are your peers, but the people that you will grow up to supervise, and the people who will supervise you. So learning to work with people is a critical part of a career plan. And then coming into the office, obviously you're going to meet different kinds of people from different backgrounds. What was it that stood out for me? What did I do as an individual that stood out for me? I wanted to be someone who solves problems. And I'll repeat that again. I wanted to be someone who solves people's problems, irrespective of who you are in the office. I want to be somebody you will go to if you need a problem solved. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that will endear you to people is that they can come to you when they need help. If you set out to help people solve problems, and sometimes the problems are simple. Somebody who is competent enough to help you reset your computer, somebody who is interested enough to, help you set up your office space, or somebody who would recommend the book to you. It could be as simple as that. Or somebody who knows enough about the environment to tell you where to find the stuff that you need. So if you go into a career, just remember this. People will always pay for someone who solves problems. Um, and I mean, obviously get along with people is important. Continue to self-motivate. Do not wait. Do not wake up motivated because of what your supervisor said last night. You need to wake up motivated even if your supervisor did not say anything or said something that would otherwise have demotivated you. You need to understand that your time is your most valuable asset, and you need to decide upfront how much of it you want to put into the various things you do. How much of your time should go into your career? How much should go into your faith? How much should go to your family? You need to make that time. I can share a little example in my life. Um, I was very passionate about football early in my career. But I realized that I was spending an average of 16 to 20 hours a week, either watching football, talking about football, researching about football. And then as I realized I needed more time in my career, I needed to make a call. And I figured out that the only thing that I could give up at that time, because I couldn't give up the time with the family, I couldn't give up time with my friends, was to give up football. And so I stopped watching Premiership at weekends. And it was a very difficult decision. I cut myself off from DSTV, but I needed to give time to my career at that time. It was the only way that I could excel at what I was doing. That's the sort of decisions that you have to make. And then when you get into the office, you also have to make difficult calls like, I am not necessarily having fun working with someone, but the only way I can excel in what I'm doing is to continue to work with the person. And you make those calls to make it work out, no matter how difficult it is. These are the things that in human engagement would be constant. Um, Coming back to the work itself, you need to be what I would call a mile deep. So a lot of people you meet know a little about different things, and they can have a little conversation about the different aspects of management, but they don't have a foundation in any one of them. The problem with that is you are really not able to deal with things when it gets complex. You gain the capacity to deal with complexities by having technical experience in some field. And it doesn't matter what the field is. It could be a legal field, but because you have gone a mile deep, you've really dug in, you know what it's like at the base, you understand what it is to build. So while building your career, it is tempting to try and be a generalist, but it is important for you to have some segment of it where you are the specialist. It could be operational, it could be marketing, it could be, like I said, legal, it could be risk management. And in these days, it could be data analytics. It doesn't matter, but there has to be something that forms your foundation from which you can then elevate yourself and become a generalist as you go up later in your career. Um, Again, what are the other things you can invest? I think you must invest in people. Uh, this may sound strange given that we're talking about investing in yourself, but the best investment you can make in your career is to actually invest in the people you collaborate with, especially as you get to middle management and people start to report into you. Your ability to take time and invest in them and help them to succeed elevates your performance, because every single one of them contributes to what is then your performance. So I would repeat this again. If you have not yet started investing in people, no matter how junior you are in your career, that is something important you must start. Invest in your peers, invest in the people around you, and investing in them could be something as simple as you read a very important article that you think they might be interested in. Don't just forward it, summarize it, give them a reason to want to read it. In other words, become a source of knowledge for the people around you. It could also be something as simple as picking on problems that people are struggling with and helping them get over, solve it. One more thing, you have to also be proactive. I'm sure everybody tells you this, oh, be proactive, be proactive. What it means is that when you come into the job in the early days, we don't expect you to know so much. It's normal. So ask questions. Make a fool of yourself if necessary. Nobody is going to look at someone who is just coming out of school asking complex questions and think they are fools. Ask those questions, learn those stuff. But as you start to become comfortable, you have to then proactively start looking for problems to solve. Don't wait for your supervisor to tell you what the problems are. Try to think about what the problems are and solve for it. Um, in ensuring that we have enough time for questions, I will sort of try and round up now. Every single career you are in, you serve somebody. It could be your customers, could be internal, working with people within your organization, or they're external. If you don't learn to position yourself, put yourself in the place of the customer and understand their pain points, no matter how much effort you put into your career, it is not likely that you will do as well as you could. It is important to put yourself in the place of the person that you work for or work with and try to solve for their pain points. Also, as you go into your career, you need to decide upfront exactly why you are picking up a career. For some people, it's very clear. They just need to earn a living for a while before they move on to what they're passionate about, which could be another career, or it could be starting a business. But here is the one thing I can say to you. Every single day, people are watching you. Even if all you plan to do is spend a year on your career, as it were, just recognize this. People will judge you every day, and that judgment is what they will approach you with anytime they meet you in the future. So think of it this way. You are always auditioning. Even if you don't like your current employer, you are meeting people who will not be in that particular company forever. You're meeting customers who are going to be elsewhere. You are auditioning. Seek to make it your best day. Give your best no matter what. Even if it is your last day on a job, give your best. Finally, I will sum up by saying, what is driving you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? You wake up in the morning because you have to earn a living. Are you driven by fear? Are you driven by hope? Are you driven by ambition? Are you driven by a desire to change your environment, to change the world? Those things matter. My advice to you is that look deep inside. And going back to the first comment about what do you have to invest, recognize that you have all of your life to invest, every single hour of your day to invest, and decide what to invest towards, what is driving you. Know that you have something to give. Find something that you're passionate about, something that you deeply care about. Build the competencies in that area, meaning that you have to continue to learn and learn. Build relationships, so important, especially with people who are not powerful enough to affect your life. That's what you think. The best relationships are not the one you build upwards. They're actually the relationships you build downwards, because those are the people whose performance will aggregate to make you a star. So remember this, what is driving you. Find something you're purposeful about, you have that is you're passionate about, something that gives you a purpose, something that you're good at. Bring it all together by waking up on your own, at your own time, self-driven, determined, and recognize that you have the capacity to improve every single day. And what people see as a successful career is a sum of daily improvement over years and sometimes over decades. It doesn't matter how small, do something to improve yourself every single day. I think I will stop at this point, so we'll have a lot of time for your questions.
Thank you very much, sir. That was extremely insightful. I'm already seeing loads of questions and lots of positive affirmations in the chat. I would say two things that really stuck out to me was one, saying that at the core of what you do, you want to be a problem solver. And I think that's really important for all of us to carry along and know that at the core of everything that we do, we need to have certain guiding principles that drive us every day. And also you mentioned how we can, even if we're not able to make huge career investments at a time, there's daily sort of micro investments that we can make in our everyday lives, and also investing in relationships, people around us, and building our network how we can. So thank you very much, Sir. Next on our agenda, we'll be moving towards moderator-led Q&A. So we've already curated some questions for Mr. Abu, so we can dig deeper and drill even further on and gain more insights from him. Following after that, we would love to take some general Q&A from the audience. So everyone should be able to see a Q&A box on their screen. So if you have questions, please start to collate them here. After the moderator-led Q&A, we'll start taking questions from the audience in this, the ones that we see in this Q&A box. So as you have your questions, just type them in there and then we'll take them afterwards. Okay, so Mr. Abu, we have some questions here for you. I would love for you to be as candid as possible, lean on your experience already like you've been. And, the first one that we have here, you already started to touch on a sacrifice that you had to make, which was leaning back on your love for football, so other things can progress. So the question really is the fact that you've been talking about investments quite a bit. We want to know what your biggest sacrifice that you've ever had to make, and what decision-making skill helped you support this. So if you'd like to elaborate more on the football example, or if you have other examples of making a big sacrifice that you'd like to lean on.
I think the sacrifice that I regret making, or I came close to regretting, happened very early in my career. For those of us who work in consulting, if you've done tax consulting before, one of the most complex jobs you can get is to be given a corporate tax computation to handle. And usually you wouldn't get it until you've been around for months, maybe years. I got lucky a few months into my career with Arthur Andersen. I was given such a job. Started it. I went home very happy, waiting to come back the next day to complete it. And I got a call in the morning that a family member, a very close family member of mine, had been robbed, and that the guard at the gate had been shot. And I was caught between, I can't go to work, even though it wasn't the family member that was shot. And the other side was, if I don't go to work, I won't get a second chance to finish this job. And I was so certain that I was going to be able to do a good job. So I checked on them to make sure that they were okay without actually going to visit, and I went to work. And for many years, I thought about it. I felt like I made a choice between work and family, and I've never done that again. There have been other difficult decisions, but none that's as personal as that to me. I'm not sure that the family member even remember, but I never forgot. And from that day on, I sort of drew a line. I've made sacrifices. Apart from giving up football, I gave up playing golf. I was passionate about golf. In 2013, I realized that the scale of what I wanted to achieve, I didn't have the time for golf, so I gave it up. So those things happen, but I think the one that I wouldn't encourage anybody to do is things that are personal, family related. Mm-hmm. If you can avoid making those sacrifices, I'd rather you don't make them.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm hearing from everyone that how insightful this is and how many take homes that we're receiving from you. I'll move on to the next question. And this one says, Sterling Bank is known for investing in its human capital and creating a supportive and encouraging environment for its employees to thrive. What are some best practices that entrepreneurs and employers at large can learn from you in this regard?
I think what we've tried to put at the heart of our philosophy as an organization is to recognize that numbers don't make a company. The buildings don't make a company. Those things and nothing, and if you take away the people. So while it's a very compassionate workplace and we continue to push for that, we also do that from a commercial perspective, recognizing that the way to create value in the future is to actually invest in people today. The other thing we've done is you can't run an organization that is dispassionate and unemotional about humanity and expect to create a workplace that is humane. So we have also revisited our strategy to make sure that we're focused on the things that are humane, things that makes us human, things that help the society become a better place. So if those are at the core of the work we do, allow me to mention the health sector. If you are focused on health, if you're focused on education, if you're focused on agriculture or renewable energy or transport, there's no way you don't start to engage human beings as humans rather than just another contract or another money-making opportunity. So the core of our work becomes humane. It's almost like when you work in the health sector, if you are a nurse or you're a doctor, you are by your nature humane.
Mm.
So that's what you need to do. You need to orient your business to focus on humanity. Then it is much easier for the people to be humane. Because again, at the end of the day, creating a humane workplace is really more about your people and the way they treat each other rather than some board event. You know, the managers and the way they treat those that report to them. It's the young people who have just resumed and how they will treat the cleaner in the office. Those are the things that makes an office humane.
Right. So leaning on the hearts of the people and making sure at the core that your employees together have a good culture that can ultimately help the organization thrive even more. Okay, thank you very much for that, sir. So I particularly like this question, and I think for a lot of us who are starting on very early in our career, this is something that can be very sensitive and even sort of push us back from achieving our goals. So I think it's important that we ask this. You've been extremely successful in your career, but perhaps there were times where you faced rejection. So you're trying to get a meeting and the meeting doesn't work out, or you're trying to, move forward with the project, and for some reason the stakeholders are not supportive. So rejection of any type. How do you handle rejection, and what can we learn from your own experiences?
Well, I don't know that my experience can help anyone, but I'll tell you this. I have learned to separate everything that I do from who I am. I think it's important to always remember this. Both your success and your failures, um, whatever they are, do not necessarily define you.
Mm.
You need to define yourself and separate yourself from the activities that goes on around you, because those activities can be positive or negative. And usually in a single day, you go through a whole list of emotions from a very good beginning in the morning, something works out well. By afternoon, you have a really bad setback. I mean, you cannot allow yourself to follow those emotional curves. They're not you. What you are is your own commitment, is what you've committed to and how you've applied yourself. You need to understand that. I don't know that rejections ever ends. I think it's a permanent thing unless you stop aspiring. The reason you face rejections and some setback is because you set targets for yourself that are high. If you stop setting those targets and you lower your bar, you almost never face rejection. So again, they also prove that you are stretching new muscles and you are getting to new limits. And as you get to higher limits, you face more rejection, and then you double up your efforts to get success. So separate it from yourself and accept that it will happen. The other thing is make sure there are multiple things that you are investing yourself in at any point in time on the job, so that a single failure does not mess up your entire week or month.
So that was so insightful. The fact that rejection is permanent. So whatever level you're in your career, we should essentially get used to it, because it could even also be an underlying factor that you're progressing, you're facing new challenges, and you're growing. Because if you're seeing new rejections, that means you're pushing for greater heights. So I love that. Thank you. Okay, so next question. With the current pandemic, a lot of us are currently working from home or studying at home. We're all basically on lockdown right now. What are your thoughts on the future of online education and remote working in Africa?
This is an area I'm very passionate about. I think it, we, the pandemic is a huge setback for us as a society, and the economic cost is incalculable. But it is also an opportunity. I've always believed that the cost of education in its current form is not only is it unreasonable, I actually think it's unaffordable. And if we insist that the only way to get a decent education is in its current structure, then it means that we're going to exclude not millions or hundreds of millions. We end up excluding billions of people from access to education.
Mm.
I don't think it is necessary. I think that the process of educating people today can very easily become affordable and accessible at a tenth of the price and without a deterioration in quality. So I am a strong advocate of online education. That's one. That's one. I think the first real step towards flattening the world is through leveraging technology and communication to make information and therefore education available to all. So I hope that we all don't run back into the expensive process of flying out of the country to seek for education that we could very easily get for a fraction of the cost here, especially if you can combine that with some work experience while getting the education. The second part about it is what does this mean for remote work? Um, if as humanity we would take this as day one in resetting our work culture and structure and infrastructure, we could actually save the world. One thing I'm passionate about also is the environment. And I think that if we take this, what we've learned in the last month and a half, and rebuild the entire work culture on it, we could actually save the environment. Because there's, at least in my sector, there's almost nothing that we could not remotely deliver. And where there are things that could not be delivered remotely, there are alternatives that we can very quickly build and therefore move on. My advice to every single person is that as you prepare for your career, also prepare to be effective working remotely. Think of the skills that you need to acquire to be effective working remotely. Some of the skills are simple, like how do I stay fit, being indoor by myself, mentally and physically fit. You need to acquire those skills because the future will look a lot more like today than it will look like January or December last year.
Yeah, so that's huge. I mean, it seems like we're on the brink of a new normal, and something that you said that really stood out is the fact that there's nothing that you do that can't be remotely delivered as an organization. And I think this is a huge lesson, a huge takeaway for all of us who, especially with the banking industry, things like banks and universities as well, are typically thought of as brick and mortar institutions that you need to have some type of physical interaction with. But if an entire bank can deliver absolutely amazing quality and deliver on customer experience and all of that and do it remotely, then there's almost no reason why other organizations can't do that. So for all of us entrepreneurs on the line and those of us who are leaders and employers, that's something that we should all be considering right now, as you rightfully said, is making sure that we have the systems in place that can enable us to deliver remotely and leverage technology. Okay, so next question. Would like to know a little bit more about your educational background and how this may or may not have served as a launchpad for your successful career.
Well, I'm largely Nigerian educated. Went to primary, secondary school in Benue State, where my parents lived then. And I went to university in Abuja. It was an interesting school because it was a new school. We were the second set. So I didn't have the benefit of experiencing a campus like IFE or Unilag with thousands of people, but I did enjoy the intimacy that came from that, both with my co-students as well as the lecturers. I studied economics, What I really wanted to do, though, was study literature, which I was passionate about and I enjoyed a lot. I'm not sure how good I would have been at it, but I definitely had the passion for it. But I concluded I wasn't going to be able to earn a decent living if I studied that. I don't know if that's true now. People are getting paid a ton of money to write books now. So I studied economics, came out of school, and went straight to work. Um, yeah, and I've worked since then. I did take time out for a part-time um, study between 2011 to 2013 to get a master's in major programs management at Oxford University. But that's my equivalent of adult education. But the bulk of my education really happened here. And at the risk of sounding immodest, a lot of what I know today is self-taught or learned on the job because most of what I studied in university in 1995 clearly are not very useful today anymore. And this is going to be true for everyone. Your education is useful, but as you start to get into the job, you're going to learn so much more on your own, on the job, than you would learn from school. So what you must take away from schooling is that inquisitiveness, that desire to find out, and the ability. I mean, these days, I think we're all experts at using Google now, but in those days, you needed to have the skills to do research. I think those are the things you take away from school.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you feel like you've learned more on the job, which is, of course, expected. I think a lot of us are starting to realize that now, that getting experience early on with the use of internships and, type of co-ops and things like that is so important to your career, if not more important than the academic aspects of things. Okay, so I have just one last question before we open up to our audience questions. I see we already have about 120 questions so far, so we have to get onto it very fast. Last question from us. Being familiar with what you've done recently amidst the pandemic and playing your role in the community on the health side of things, I see that Sterling Bank has done a number of different community investments and donations here. And even on the education side of things, where you've worked with Nexford University and put in about 150 of your employees into the program. This being the HEART of Sterling Bank, the H standing for health and the E standing for education. Can you tell us a bit more about what your investments have been for Sterling and in these different areas to benefit the community in recent times?
Very quickly, when we looked at what was going on with COVID, we realized that the biggest challenge was testing. So we supported LifeBank in deploying the use case or the first proof of concept for their mobile test site. We then moved from testing. We realized that the next big challenge was the health workers. So people were donating a lot of money to buy PPE and ventilators, but nobody was paying attention to the nurses and the doctors. So we quickly set up a fund. The intention is to raise 1 billion naira. We started by contributing 25 million to it. The last time I checked, that has doubled. We had well over 50 million. And we set up a board to distribute the money as hazard allowance to the health workers so they can take care of their basic needs. We've then moved on to work with Faith Foundation in their effort to renovate isolation centers. And that was interesting. We donated to that process. And obviously we donated to the federal government. We felt that at times like this, we all needed to make the extra effort to turn it from being a financial challenge to more of a logistics challenge, and then they can deal with that. So what we do is look for where the pressure points are. We also realized that there was a risk with people going into hospitals at times like this. So we paid for 100,000 patients to be able to access healthcare on Tremendoc. You can download the app, Tremendoc, and be able to have access to doctors rather than walking to medical facilities that may be contaminated. So we're looking at where the pressure points are for people and where we can do something about it. We jump in very quickly to help.
All right, thank you very much, sir. If we don't get to these Q&As, we may be on this phone for much longer than our time allots. So if you can see the Q&A box.
Yes.
Okay, so you see we have several open questions. So would you like to review some of these and start answering the ones that you would like to pick
Okay,
up? Okay.
absolutely. So forgive me, I'm going to keep the answers very short, so we'll take as many as possible. The first one is Antonia Idowu, the future of education goes beyond brick and mortar to virtual learning. Um, Yes, I think that employers are going to start accepting degrees from online university like Nexford. I think it's going to also become obvious that the quality of the education is even sometimes superior. But the best part with the online education is that you must try and combine it with some work experience because it gives you that opportunity to do that. What does it take for an ex-banker to be a financial um, S consultant? Felix, I'm no financial consultant, but I can tell you that it takes knowledge and it takes experience. But most importantly, it takes the discipline of research. You don't want to consult until you can bring together a large body of information and then summarize it for the end user. If an individual is interested in academics, okay, such as individual hears experiences over degrees, what was unfortunately, I can't say much about interest in academics. It is my desire to hopefully teach at some point, but I am not competent to speak on that now. How can one be considered for a job without a good result? That question is interesting because I'm of the opinion that results needs to be set aside increasingly. We need to be able to evaluate people for their experience. It's not yet mainstream opinion, even within my own organization, but I hope that in the months ahead, people would realize that everybody needs to be evaluated for what they can bring rather than how well they studied in the past and wrote exams. Okay, I will just randomly go through. There's a question about career opportunity in Nexford University. I suspect that is not for me.
Yeah, so
How is it?
we'll start to type out the answers, especially the ones that are targeted to Nexford. We'll just type out the answers. So if you want to pick the ones that you want to answer live, you can scan through.
Okay, there are some questions about mentorship. My sense is that it's very difficult to get people who are busy to give you quality time for mentorship unless you demonstrate a commitment to whatever you're doing and they can see that. So the first step to getting a really good mentor is to push yourself and prove that you are genuinely worthy of mentoring. Okay, a question here that relates to the Nigerian civil service. If you were head of service or Nigerian civil service, what would you do differently, leveraging on my experience? Oof. Well, I think the most important learning for me is that um, you have you have to have the right people. You have to have the right people. And if you don't have the right people, there's very little you can do unless you have the freedom to remove square pegs from round holes. You can't do much. So I'm sure whoever is running those has to deal with the question of, do I have the right people and do I have the freedom to make those changes? I'm not going to presume that I'll somehow be superior if I was there. Can I throw light on office politics in the toxic workplace? Okay, I think we all must assume that there would be office politics. What they call office politics is just human relations. Every single place you find human beings together, there is some element of politicking going on. So when there are two young kids in the house and you're going to your parents and you're trying to get that ice cream, there's some level of politicking going on. Quickly telling daddy, I'm the one that cleaned the table. It's just human nature. So recognize that people would always do that. I don't appreciate it. I don't necessarily push for it. I like to be very direct, but don't let that be an obstacle. What you need to do when you're not good at office politics or when you choose not to play is to excel on the job. You need to make up for the fact that you cannot play office politics by working twice as hard as the next person. It's the secret sauce. If you manage that, then you absolutely don't need office politics. What do you mean by investing in people? For someone whose passion is working as an Islamic finance analyst, what's the prospect? Investing in people, I hope I have spoken a little bit about it. It is about grooming people. It's about teaching people, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience, helping people when they need it. Anything you can do to make someone else better. In terms of Islamic finance analyst, it's an industry that is opening up. Unfortunately, in that sector today, experience is difficult to come by. And the reason is that it's a new sector. There are no other companies where you can get experience. My advice is try and offer yourself for internship, make a strong case as to why you can add value, and post-internship, your chances of getting a job will improve significantly. Lamidi, is there any particular question you want me to take, or anyone you want to read out for me?
So there's this one by El Hassan. What is the biggest investment I should make to boost my success? It's a tricky one.
Yeah, I think the biggest investment you can make is knowledge. And this could come in terms of your education, or it could come in terms of your work experience, or it could come in terms of just pure self-development, committing yourself to learning on a daily basis. But it could also come in terms of finding the right friend, the right partner, someone who is on the same journey as you. That could actually turn out to be a much more rewarding investment because those people ensure that you continue to stay focused. It's one of the best investments I've made in my life, finding people on the same journey who have encouraged me throughout the years.
In your opinion, what's the most plausible career path for someone with an interest in macroeconomics, infrastructural developments, finance, and legal?
I think there are two distinct career options that comes out of those areas you mentioned. One of it would be in the academia, because there is a dearth of knowledge and research in macroeconomics specific to Nigeria. Infrastructure, that's one thing you can do. If you have that bent, you can actually begin to generate research. The other is actually in execution, and that could be on the government side, working in a PPP office, or it could be in private sector, either with specific industry focus or from a financial services institution.
Okay, there's this question by Aiki. Why is it difficult most times for fresh graduates to get a job opportunity in organizations without having numerous years of work experience?
I think the challenge is a lot of the vacancies that show up are for experienced people. That's one thing. So when that opens up, when the job itself requires experience, then it's really hard to take fresh graduates. The other one is a lot of people that are fresh graduates are fresh because they did not get the opportunity for internship or for work experience while in school. If you can throw in 6 months to 1 year of work experience over the 4 years of your studies, you cease to be a fresh graduate, because when people encounter you, you come across as an experienced employee, someone who has had work experience. So my advice is try to throw in as many internships as you can so that you're not so fresh anymore when you graduate.
Okay, there's this question from someone who's anonymous. What if you graduated with a second-class lower, but have many professional certificates and also internship experience? Is there a chance to work at a top law firm or top firm in general?
Well, I won't speak for law firms. I would say that based on current experience, your chances are slimmer than someone who had a first class or a 2-1 or 2-2. That's just what it is. It doesn't mean that's the right thing, but today, people don't want to go through the job of going through 5,000 CVs. So they look for ways to cut down the number of CVs that they have to evaluate. And the first thing they start with is, okay, this someone who is either smart enough or serious enough to have paid attention to their studies and come up with a good degree, is likely going to be a good candidate. That's the sort of rule that we're working with. I'm hoping that there are changes soon and people start to get opportunity to prove themselves rather than be judged by their past performance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's two questions here that they're kind of tied based on what you had said before, Mr. Abu. So one is asking, what do you do in face of rejection? So there's what if your organization employs someone else who does not have the same expertise as you do? How do you continue to motivate yourself in such scenarios? And someone else who's asking about how to come out of your comfort zone and to continue to push outside of your comfort zone. And I remember you tied these 2 points together, so if we can answer both of those at the same time.
Okay, so the first one is that I think an organization that hires a less competent person is not the organization for you, because those negative decisions is a part of the organizational culture, and therefore they're going to promote a less competent person, they're going to take less competent decisions. So while it might look like a big loss at that point, you need to understand that longer term, you need to be somewhere where you'll be recognized for your talent and your skills. In terms of rejection, how do you handle, was that the second part of the question? How do you handle rejection?
Yes, and the second question was, how do you stay motivated?
How do you stay motivated? It's down to what I said earlier about you must separate yourself from events, from the circumstances that you find yourself in. Being rejected for a particular job is not who you are. It doesn't define you. In the same way, being accepted for that job doesn't necessarily mean you are the best person for the job either. You must understand yourself and you must invest in believing in yourself. Because rejection, whether it is for a job, on the job, it will always be there. Don't let it define you.
Okay, just scrolling through, there's a few of these that we've answered in other ways. There's a lot of people asking about getting into financial services, into the banking sector, and want to understand what's a good career path to go into.
Okay, so you already know the traditional career path in banking, operations, marketing, and all of that. But the evolving or the new career paths that are evolving, the ones that I think people should prepare themselves for, in areas that are more tech than finance, areas that are more marketing than sales. So online, being able to engage customers online. Data analytics is becoming a much more significant part of what financial institutions do. And risk management, which has always been at the core of finance. Now, risk management is taking a different form in a digital age, and there are not enough people with skills in that area. So if you want to you need to find the new areas that are coming up that at this point, we have more need than we have people who have the skills. So if you acquire those skills, you very quickly be able to get a job.
We're also getting a lot of questions around career changes. So for those who've invested a bit into their current career and then find that they have a passion elsewhere, what tips could you have for them in terms of changing their career?
I think you recognize that every time you're changing a career, you're taking a risk. And in many cases, people are unwilling to take that risk because of the uncertainty. So to that extent, I'm not asking you to jump into a career change. But I need you to recognize that your current career has a trajectory that is defined by your competence, your passion, your commitment. And if you project forward and you don't like how that is going to end, then the risk of the career change is worth it. Because if you continue on that path, you will end up disappointed. But you just need to also be sure that you prepare yourself well for the new career you're going into. So it's not just driven by a passion. I love football, so I want to be a footballer, but also your talent. I have the skill to do well. But also, again, when people talk about career change, sometimes recognize that beyond being passionate about something and being competent at it, it also has to be commercially viable. Because I've seen people pour themselves into a field that is interesting, might even be impactful, but they cannot make a living doing that. You've got to be careful with making those calls because you also need to earn a decent living to be able to live out your passion.
Mm-hmm. I'm also seeing a lot of questions. So I'm going to try and lump a lot of our questions into certain topics so we can address as many as possible before our time is up. So there's quite a number of questions about the kinds of skills that graduates can get before going into the workplace. So if it's like soft skills or hard skills, what kind of things can graduates generally do before pursuing job opportunities?
Okay, so I'm going to go into those skills, but let me quickly speak to one of the early questions that came in from Olaiwola Ashade. Um, how should businesses react to the need to compulsorily change their business process as a result of the pandemic? I think that's an interesting question. I think that businesses should see this from an opportunity rather than reaction, rather than being compelled. They should look at the benefit that could accrue. One of the primary drivers for me is that if I can make remote work feasible for my employees, some of them will gain 3 hours a day. In other words, they would find themselves with 3 hours that they would normally have spent commuting, and is now available for them either to apply to the job or apply to their life. I think that is such a major motivation for me. I feel that if you give anybody 3 hours back, they are likely to be much more committed to the job and deliver better results. Now, in terms of what are the skills that you need, I think everybody needs to be tech savvy now. It's no longer optional. And being able to get on a computer and type is no longer what tech savvy is. It's about understanding the various platforms, the skills required to operate on each one of them, how to use those platforms for communicating, for collaborating, how to use them to create value, to crowdfund ideas. You know, you've got to be tech savvy. Yeah. And you guys that are much younger, it's a lot easier for you because you have not spent the last 2-3 decades doing things differently. You have to be, technology has to be nested. If you can, if it's not too late, learn how to code. Even if you're not going to be a professional coder, it just opens your mind to what goes on in that space. That is the single most important skills that you need today to get a job in financial services, because those jobs are there right now looking for people. You have to also know that even if you are a marketing person, or we like to think of ourselves as outgoing and therefore we are salespeople, your ability to reach 1,000 people at its goal is what technology offers you. That will always yield a superior outcome to trying, unless you're selling luxury item, trying to reach one individual at a time becomes unfeasible. It's no longer the best way to get results. So even those who are marketers have to learn how to deploy technology. So learn technology, learn technology, learn technology. I think that's my number one goal. Number two is learn to work with people. It's all down to people. If you can work with people, then you can grow. I think I'll leave it at those two. There's so many more, but those two are so important.
Yes, and we have so many questions, but I would take the last two, and we'll make sure that this recording is available to everyone after this. We'll email it out. The last two questions. So one, what are ongoing programs that Sterling Bank has available to startups or entrepreneurs that can benefit from them?
We have a platform that we have invested in called StartRight. And as a result of our years of trying to help entrepreneurs, especially startup entrepreneurs, we had the SME Academy, which was our way of training SMEs across the country. So we had a mobile academy that went from state to state and tried to train SMEs so that they have skills for startup. We then did a couple of other things to identify success business ideas and grow them. We had the pitch. We did all of that, but what we realized was that you needed to create a platform that can reach out to thousands of people at the same time. So we're building a platform. It's called StartRight. It's a way of bringing all the required skills that small businesses need to get started, get registered, register for taxes, register, just all the things that would distract you at the initial phase, and all the things that you need to do to prepare yourself to access finance, to be able to access whether it is intervention fund, whether it is SME fund from Bank of Industry, from those are the things. So that platform, to my mind, is our best effort at helping startup businesses.
Okay, and lastly, we've gotten a few questions on HND and ND holders with work experience. What can they do if they don't see a chance of going back to school but want to really progress in their careers? Do you have any tips or suggestions for HND and ND holders? years?
I think the issue of degree, the class or type of degree or class of degree you hold, is more an emotional issue than a practical one. You're not more intelligent because you have a master's and somebody has an ND, but the environment in which we operate gives the benefit of doubt to someone who has a better degree, better in terms of a class of degree or a higher class of degree. That's just the reality. To beat that, to really beat that, you have to either become, like I said, the problem solver, because once you become the big problem solver in the room, you will advance in your career. Maybe not as fast if you had the requisite degrees. The second part is I really encourage you to take an online university course and migrate yourself from an OND holder to at least the first degree, because people still use those parameters to judge. So make that effort if you can. I can assure you that in the next 5 years, people would simply look at your contribution and not look at your credentials.
Thank you very much, sir, for powering through those questions. I feel like they were firing more at us as you answered. We got even more coming in. And thank you so much for everyone on the line staying engaged and asking your questions and trying to get as much as we can from Mr. Abu while we have him on the line. So to be respectful of time, we'll go ahead and end it here. Again, like I said, we'll make the recording available afterwards, and for all the Nexford related questions, we can of course answer those offline. So we have a few more slides here just to go over. Again, this was the very first webinar in our series of different upcoming webinars. So you can see all the different ones here. If you'd like to register for any of these upcoming webinars, please visit the link at the top, nexford.org/webinar-series. So Mr. Abu, thank you so much for launching this series for us with your insights. So now if anyone is interested in applying for Nexford now, you can visit the links on the left-hand side. And for Sterling Bank employees who are still looking to claim their scholarship spots, please visit the link on the right-hand side to get your process started. That is it. We have one last final surprise. Due to, of course, the lockdowns and the fact that everyone is at home and we need to really leverage our online communities more, we're consuming more data and all of that, Nexford will be giving out free data, 45 gigabytes worth of data over a 6-month period to all our incoming learners, regardless of which degree or which certificate that you're entering into. So to find out more about this opportunity, please visit the link on the top right-hand side. And with that, that concludes our webinar today. Mr. Abu, would you like to say any final words?
Just a question that I'm not sure we answered clearly enough.
Okay.
Yes, I would gladly hire anyone who is a graduate of Nexford. If I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't send my own employees to Nexford. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that endorsement. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you again to the entire Sterling Bank team, to all Nexford learners that joined us, and to the larger community. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And thank you again, Mr. Abu, for your time.
You're welcome.
All right.